started in about 1 minute. And there's a chair back there. Let's just send these and then I'll pull out. Feel free to sit. You'll want to sit where you can see. Neil, are you ready? Okay. Please, am I just starting this?
Oh, yeah, you can just let me know.
Please do. And you might leave that repeatedly, but I can find it.
They don't stay up there as long as you
Oh. Sorry. That's a long shot.
You're fine.
Well, I can do this. Yeah.
I can plan very well.
Hello, and welcome to the 2025 Women's Giving Circle of Missoula County Finalist presentation. We're so glad that you are all here. I want to give a huge shout out to Neil again for coming in on his day off to videotape for us. Well, that's on the agenda later, but I'm pretty excited. We're at 100 members, and we obviously don't have 100 people here, so we want to make sure that everybody gets to watch your presentations. But before I move forward at all, the Women's Giving Circle of Missoula County wants to acknowledge that we are on the homelands of the Salish Coolidge Bay people, and we honor the path that they have shown us for generations to care for this place and space. And we want to thank the University of Montana and the Salish and Coolidge Bay Cultural Committee for the use of that particular land acknowledgement. More than acknowledging that the land is theirs, we also want to acknowledge the way of life, that tribal way of living, that coming together. And that's what a giving circle is a lot about, the coming together. We are stronger together. So Women's Giving Circle of Missoula County, we have a couple of newer people here. And for our finalists, we're so glad you're here. Started in 2018. And it started as a joint project of the Missoula Community Foundation. I thought I saw Marcy. Oh, there's Marcy. I saw you and then I didn't, but there you are. The Missoula Community Foundation and the Montana Women's Foundation in 2018 eventually became just part of the Missoula Community Foundation. And a couple of years ago, we officially became a program of one of two major programs of the Missoula Community Foundation. Some of you have probably heard of Missoula and Bitterroot Gives, and then of course the Women's Giving Circle of Missoula County. We've existed since 2018. Since then, we've given $80,000 in grants. Our first grants were $10,000. 2 years ago, we increased that to $15,000 a year. And as our membership continues to grow organically, that's the thing I love the most about the circle, is we give, we decide, we benefit together. Our membership is from $120 to, you can give as much as you want, but same voice, same vote, regardless. Like, the membership never really sees who's giving what, right? And that's really a benefit of that, because as much as we're able to in a place like Missoula, Montana, our goal, our desire is to be equitable in all our affairs. So we're very grateful for that. I love the Women's Giving Circle. And it locked on me, Melise. I'm just saying, so I'm gonna keep making stuff up. And did I say my name's Dawn Payne? I'm Dawn. I'm Dawn Payne. I have the privilege, and have had the privilege of being on the steering committee since 2019, which sort of is a shocker, because Cindy Waltz asked me to join when they first started in 2018. I went, for $120, heck yeah, but I didn't do anything until it came to picking the finalist. And then we talked again, and I fell in love with the idea of and the benefit of and the heart of what is the Women's Giving Circle in Missoula County. Oh, I did all that. So we are so excited. You heard me say earlier we're at 100 members. When we started in 2018, the goal was 100 members. I think you made 100 members that first year. Did you? Close. Either way, they gave up money. That's great. And we're able to respond to the pandemic. Lots of good things have happened in that time. But one of the things that we love is we have a small steering committee. Our steering committee consists of 9 to 13 members. And, we select the finalists and we put on the events throughout the year, right? But the membership votes on the grant topic and they vote on who the winner of the grant is. What's super, my plug for the steering committee, because we're losing some members this year, is, and I know we have a couple that are really interested in applying, I hope, and is that we get together 4 times a year. It's pretty low maintenance, and our membership is low maintenance. We send out a renewal in February, and then we invite people. And we believe that everything, whatever we do, it's enough. So everything's an invitation, not an obligation. So we're really grateful that you're here. And so we do have vacancies, and that will be in the newsletter. If you aren't sure yet, if you're not a member and you're not sure if you want to be a member, but you want to be on our mailing list, go to the Missoula Community Foundation and contact them and just make that request, or to their website. Otherwise, I have Melissa's contact information. But I get to introduce Melise now as our incoming chair. Woo-hoo.
I don't have much to say. I did write this down because I feel like what I have to say is that the steering committee has definitely already heard these sentiments, but it's important and I want to say it right, and I will just babble if I don't write it down. So sorry for all of you that I'm reading, but this is Dawn's last event with us as our steering committee chair, and I want to take a moment to recognize Dawn as she wraps up her time as chair. Her leadership over the past few years has truly strengthened this giving circle. She's helped us grow our membership. She's refined how we work together and built real momentum for the future. On a personal note, I have learned so much from her leadership. She's thoughtful, full of humor, especially in herself, which really means a lot to me, and deeply committed to this community and this circle. She's left us in such a strong position. And while we will miss her steady presence, your impact will be, I will absolutely be continued to be felt. So we will miss you. We just have a little something for you. Here's this. Thank you. And will you hold this for a second? Thanks.
I'm really not going anywhere.
And those, thank you, and this for your wall.
And I love that they have both logos, the Missoula Community Foundation and the Women's Giving Circle.
Okay, I'm not gonna cry. Yeah, that's it. Well, and I just also wanted to say that we do have another member of the steering committee who's rolling off this year, Katiana. So I just wanted to say thank you to Katiana. Katiana has killer notes whenever anyone sends in their application. I always rely on her notes to help frame my views, even if they are opposite from what I think. So thank you, Katiana. Have you enjoyed it? Yes. It's the people that make it. You all are pretty fabulous. Yes, they are. Okay, and that's, I look forward to meeting all of you or I guess not meeting you because I know you, but getting to know you all a little bit better, and thank you for having me.
and the iPad's unlocked.
Yeah.
So now, what are we doing here tonight? We have been waiting for this, so we just want to recap quickly. I sort of did a little bit, but the membership selects the grant focus every year, and we actually did have a discussion about if we wanted to like do 2 or 3 year focuses. But we really like, because our membership evolves and changes every year, and we really love to give opportunities for everybody to engage in a level that's meaningful for them. So our membership selects our grant focus. We opened the application July 15th. I forgot when we closed it, September 1st? Something like that, to give more time for the applicants. We had a panel presentation, incredible panel presentation in August. If you're a member, a voting member, and you want to refresh yourself, it is in the newsletter to review the panelist presentation as you're deciding who to vote for. The application closed, August 30th. And then the steering committee met twice. And I'm telling you, we had all incredible applicants, so it was not an easy task. Our goal always is to choose 3 somewhat diverse applicants for the membership to choose from. So we want to welcome Forward Montana. We have Alice Boyer, the Executive Director. From the Pulp, Erica Fredrickson, co-founder, co-publisher. And then from the International Rescue Committee, or often referred to as IRC, we have Ashley Malwani. Not even close. How did I do on your last name?
You did great.
Awesome.
You nailed it.
Managing attorney, Catherine Fulcher, legal assistant, and Antonio Oliveras. How close?
Great.
Okay. Ibarra, legal assistant. Wow. Awesome. So we are so excited. But before we start with our first, no, we'll do that first. So first up, we have Forward Montana and Alice Boyer. So she will speak for 15 minutes. We're always learning and growing. Last year, I forgot to set a timer. So this year, I have my phone and I will set a 15-minute timer. If you want to...
I've also got a timer, so...
Okay, look at me for clues, but if you could come up and use the mic,
Yeah.
please. Do we have your presentation to put
Yes.
up here?
Yes. So, I've got...
Awesome. And I'm just going to try and keep this open.
I meant to tell you, I will let you know when you have 5 minutes left, 2 minutes left.
Are you doing that?
Yeah, I got it.
I am so off the book. I'm going to eat and listen.
I eat a snack in between those. Oh, okay, let me set a timer. Okay. Oh, nice, that's okay.
Lovely, okay. I'm gonna start my primer and I'll also try to keep track of where I'm at. Hi everyone, my name is Alice Boyer. I use she, her pronouns. And as was mentioned, I'm the executive director at Forward Montana. I'm still relatively new. I came on 4 months ago. Started at the beginning of June, and so this is actually my very first presentation of this sort to be giving to a group of people, which is very exciting. It's also very nerve-wracking, so please bear with me as I do have some notes that I'll kind of be looking back at. But I'm excited to be here today to chat with you all. Want to give just a little bit of a sense of who I am. So I was born and raised, born in Missoula, lived for the first couple years in some neighboring communities, so in Dixon, Montana, and Charlotte. But then by the time I got into kindergarten, my family moved back to Missoula, and I spent my whole life through high school here. Went to college for 1 semester at Florida State, because I did the classic, growing up in a small Montana place, I'm gonna go as far away as I can. Very quickly realized I wanted to come back to Montana. Did so, and then graduated with a degree in philosophy from the University of Montana, just down the road. That feels important because I think it really, especially the philosophy degree, frames a lot of how I look at this work in movement spaces broadly, and kind of how I ended up getting into an executive director position is I really like to think about the big picture and how everything sort of fits into that big picture. So with this presentation, I'm going to start off talking a little bit about Forward Montana as a whole, and then I'll bring us down into what specifically we would be using this grant to support in our work. So, Forward Montana, our main focus is engaging young Montanans through civic education, voter registration and voter mobilization. We are actually a multi-entity organization. I'll give a little bit of context there. We have 3 entities: Forward Montana, which is our C4, Forward Montana Foundation, which I'm going to be talking to you mostly about today. Actually, we can go on to the next slide. Sorry, I'm not used to doing that. It's like, oh, what's my next slide? Lovely. And then the Forward Montana Voter Fund, which is our state PAC. Forward Montana, the C4, was started in 2004, and it's really cool because it was started by a group of students at the University of Montana here in Missoula who were upset about the process that the Board of Regents at the time was going through to decide whether or not Montperg's student fee was going to be $3 or $5. Doesn't sound like a huge difference, but just that $2, especially in 2004, from every student, right, adds up and really impacts the way that the student organization was able to advocate for student voices. So this group of students got together, were really upset by what was happening at the Board of Regents, realized that there was actually an opportunity to impact the way or the decisions that the Board of Regents was making, because there would be some new appointments being made. And so they decided the best way they could impact the outcome of this was to actually organize other students and impact who was going to be appointed to the Board of Regents and who would ultimately be making the decisions that they were fighting for. I'm going to speed through this. If you're interested in learning more about Forward Montana history, please come get me. But ultimately they ended up being successful, which is really cool, and it sort of ignited this fire amongst them to say, okay, like cool, look at what all of these young people were able to do, what else can we expand to? So Forward Montana continued to grow, and in 2011, Forward Montana Foundation was created, because in that time we had done a lot of work on issue advocacy across the board and a lot of different issues that impact young people. But we also started to recognize this really important need for more civic education. So we were talking to young people about why they should get involved in issues that were impacting their lives, but we were also noticing that there was this gap in sort of basic civic education that folks were getting. So in 2011, Forward Montana Foundation was created with the main focus of being really non-political, nonpartisan, very focused on civic education specifically, and being able to create some separation so that we could have those conversations in a more effective way through the foundation. Overall, for both organizations, our main pillars are really voter engagement, issue advocacy, and leadership development. And over that time, we've registered over 50,000 young folks to vote since 2004, which is really, really exciting and cool. And folks that we register to vote do turn out at higher rates than the rest of young people in Montana. So in 2018, the folks that we registered to vote turned out 19% higher than their counterparts in Montana. And then just in 2024, they turned out 21% higher than their counterparts in Montana, which is really cool and exciting. And we think that has to do with the way that we have multiple touch points with folks that we're engaging with, right? We meet them out in public, ask them to register to vote. We follow up with them with our pledge to vote texts, calls, knock on their doors. They get mail. I'm sure every one of you has had experiences like this with organizations similar. If we want to go to the next slide. This is a demonstration of how Forward Montana has really grown over the last 21 years. We started in Missoula, but now we have offices in Missoula, Bozeman, and Billings. And then we also have staff in Glendive, Helena, Butte, and the Flathead. Our offices are located in those spaces because that is where a large proportion of young people are, right? We've got the University of Montana, Montana State University, and then Billings is our biggest city in the state, and there's a lot of young folks that live there. But we also know that it's really important to make sure we have staff not just congregated in those areas so that we can plug into work happening in other places. And also because, as maybe folks in this room know, I definitely know growing up in Missoula, it can be easy to feel a little bit in a bubble if you stick to one place. And as a statewide organization, it's important for us that we have different perspectives informing the way that we're doing our work. Next slide. Lovely. These are two very interesting statistics that are going to kind of inform the way that or the rest of the program that I talk about here. The first, and they both come from the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement. I had to write that down. It's a big acronym. The first points out the fact that 60% of young people in the United States live in what we refer to as a civic desert. So they are not getting the civic opportunities and civic education that we would like to see them have, and so they're coming into the civic world able to engage, but not really feeling like they have the information that would make them feel confident and comfortable in actually participating. The second point here is that 74% of youth trust their peers when it comes to civic information, and that trust is directly linked to voter turnout. So as I talk about the rest of this sort of program here, one of the things that we think is really important is that this work is designed, informed by, led by young people, because we know that, and I think it makes total sense in my experience at least, is if a young person hears from someone who maybe is not experiencing what they are experiencing, it is going to be much harder to trust that that person understands what they're thinking or the way they're thinking about engaging with our civic institutions than if another young person who is going through the same thing or had the same experiences or similar experiences is telling them why it's important to vote. And we see this all the time, asking young people to register to vote out in community, where we see people say, well, we haven't experienced real change, right? Like many of us, myself included, the first election that I was able to participate in fully, major election, was 2016. And I'm sure as many of you probably can recognize, that was a big year. And since then, it has felt very much like our systems are polarized. And in that conversation that I can have with someone as another young person feels very different than people who maybe have experienced more non-polarized civic life. We'll go to the next slide. So since the inception of Forward Montana and Forward Montana Foundation, we have always done a lot of civic education just in the conversations we've had, in being asked to come to groups maybe like this or schools to have conversations about voting and why it's important. But in 2024, we really branded this and put some structure to the program in a way that we hadn't necessarily done in the past. So in 2024, we pulled together this program called Civics Under the Big Sky, or CUBS for short, which is a cute little acronym, of course, originating in Missoula, CUBS. And this program is, again, really focused on civic education and giving people the tools they need in order to engage in civic life. We do this through a number of things, including our high school fellowship. We hold a civics summer camp. We do our annual Democracy Days, which is an event in the spring where we support high schoolers to register their their co-high schoolers to vote. And we also facilitate our civic templates, which is the program that this grant would go to, would go towards supporting. In 2024, we facilitated and supported the facilitation of civic templates in Billings, Stevensville, Missoula, Ronan, Roundup, Bozeman, and Livingston. And in 2025, we are again continuing to facilitate those or support the facilitation here in Missoula at Hellgate and Big Sky so far, in Great Falls, Bozeman, Billings, Whitehall, and Stevensville. And actually currently my CUBS organizer is at the MFPE conference and connecting with teachers from across the state, hoping to be able to come into their classrooms or support them to actually deliver and facilitate some of these civic templates. Next thing. As I mentioned, it's really important that as we are both getting this information out to young people, that we are supporting young people to actually do that. So like I said, we hire young folks, defined as 18 to 35 for our purposes here. But then also, we really work on a model where if we can, we want to be able to support young high school students to actually deliver these civic templates in their communities amongst their peers. And so our organizer, Sylvia, will go and actually have conversations, support the teenagers and high school students to learn how to facilitate this template, lead the conversation about civic engagement and education, and then be able to debrief and get support through that. If a student is wanting to, it's a scary thing, stand up in front of your peers, talk about civic education. If they aren't willing to do that, we also support teachers to do that in their classrooms. And or Sylvia is also able to go and actually facilitate these discussions in high schools, but also in community groups. And this is all at no cost to teachers or schools, students, or anything. This is all us putting forward this information. This is just some of the stuff we've done, and we got 3 minutes, so I'm actually going to move into the next thing here. And talk specifically about the civic templates. Currently, we have 6 civic templates that you can see at the top, and they range from things like holding a mock election to learning how to tell your story of self and communicate to people why you care about something and why they should also care about something and get involved. We have facilitated hundreds of these since 2018 when we really started this civic template process and facilitation model. And in 2025 alone, we've already facilitated or supported the facilitation of 24 of them, which is amazing. And now, with the sort of things that are on the horizon, we are interested in developing 3 new civic templates. One on the Montana State Constitution, one on the Montana Supreme Court, and then one on the Montana Potential Constitutional Convention that will be a really big deal in 2030. The next slide is just a fun little piece. So in 2030, we will have, as Montanans, the option to vote on holding another constitutional convention. For folks who don't know, Montana's constitution, automatically, every 20 years, we have a question that comes on the ballot asking Montanans if we want to rewrite the state constitution. That was last got a yes vote in 1970, and so that is how we came about with the 1972 Montana State Constitution. The thing, though, is that many people, 1, don't know that that is going to happen in only 5 years, that vote is going to happen. 2, aren't really sure what that means, and I think that's totally reasonable, let alone if you are a high school freshman who's going into school right now and is going to come out and be ready and eligible to vote in 2030 with these like civic desert landscapes that we're seeing. It is more critical than that ever. To be able to make sure that we are getting ahead of things and actually making sure people have the tools and the information about what this all will mean and the potential impact that this state constitutional convention could have for decades in Montana. And so that is a big reason why we think that now is the important time to really develop this civic template and start being able to get this information out to high schoolers who are going to be ready to actually vote in 2030. Quick little timeline of how we will, I know I'm probably over 1 minute, of how this project will kind of go in 2026. We'll start drafting and designing the templates in early 2026.
Time, I'm so sorry.
That's okay, thank you all. I
We have 5 minutes for questions, so if anyone has a question.
Just slide up.
digest.
So, thank you, Alice. So are there any questions? And Alice, I'm gonna let you just facilitate, I'll help you, but
Yeah, lovely, I see a hand here.
Specifically, can you talk to how you would use the $50,000 grant?
Yeah, so in the past, the development of the civic templates have incorporated actually bringing together in physical space over a series of meetings, time to connect like scholars and actual like practitioners, people who are organizing in these spaces to come together and develop templates that, 1, get the information across, but also are the relevant, important information that we think needs to get across via the template, but also to be able to make sure that it flows and makes sense, you test it. So one of the things that it would go to is being able to actually pay some small like stipends basically to people who are engaged in that process with us and actually bring folks together to host those sort of meetings. Excuse me. And then also to support, so mostly the actual development of the civic templates, but then also any bit that ends up being left over from that would be going to support our organizer, our Cubs organizer, to really develop her skills and being able to facilitate those specific issues and support other people to facilitate those as well.
And by template, do you mean kind of like a lesson plan or like
Yes, great question.
like a
Yep.
piece of paper or?
Yeah, so they're like lesson plans that you use as a guideline to facilitate conversation in a group of folks about a topic.
Any other questions for Alice?
So because their lesson plans, is your target audience mainly high school seniors or?
High schoolers, so we broadly define young folks as actually 14 to 35. When we're doing voter registration, of course, that becomes 18 to 35 or 17 if they're ready to able to vote in the next election to 35. But we do actually focus on freshmen through senior year and are willing and able to go in and help facilitate all across that. And for our high school fellowships, we've got freshmen who will join us, we've got juniors, seniors who will join us. I did see your hand up briefly.
Oh, if no one else has any other questions, is there anything that you would like, that you weren't able to say, that you would like to finish on?
I do just want to double check and make sure, does anyone else have any other questions before I just? Okay, lovely. Well, maybe if you wouldn't mind just going to the next slide, since this has been up and I know people have sort of digested it. We do really think a lot about how are we actually measuring impact, and I will say that the work that we do as organizers, I think, is hard to figure out, right? Like deep organizing, especially when you're talking about working with high school freshmen who aren't even going to be able to vote until 4 years from now. It is hard to measure the impact immediately of what that looks like, but we really do our best by doing things like analyzing these rates of the people that we register to vote, how much more are they actually likely to turn out to vote, right, based on the interactions that we're having with folks. So that is one way that we measure our impact. We also measure our impact by the number of people we're able to register to vote, by the fellow numbers that we graduate, how many fellows we were able to graduate in our high school fellowship program, the number of templates we're able to facilitate. Ideally, right, we're continuing to sort of like boost those numbers and get into more high schools. With the rebranding of civics under the Big Sky, or branding of this program, one of the things we're looking at is this actually helping us get into more rural schools that maybe are a little more hesitant because of the political nature of our C4. But now that we can kind of remove that piece of it and be really clear on the civic education piece, are we actually seeing that shift the way that we're being received in places that really need this education more and more. But then also qualitatively, we really take seriously feedback, and at the end of every facilitation, we ask people to fill out an anonymous feedback form, and we build that into the process. So we're not sending it out after email. We are taking 10 minutes at the end of a facilitation, right, to say, okay, now everyone, let us know what went well, what could be done differently, and that qualitative feedback is really, really important to us. So that is, I think, the last thing I wanted to say.
Thank you, Alice. And now, for our second finalist, we have the Pulp, and we have Erica. Oh, I do have my glasses on my head. Frederickson. Did I just said, oh yes, co-founder and co-publisher.
Great. I'm also going to use some notes because I'm behind a computer so much writing, and this is not usual for me, but I do love doing it when I can, and it's good for me to be able to speak about what we're doing to such a great seeming group here. So I'm Erica Frederickson from the Pulp. My Pulp partner, Matthew Frank, is sick today, so he's not here, but I think probably some of you know a little bit about who we are, but we launched in 2023 as a journalism nonprofit organization to produce in-depth journalism that informs and engages the people of Missoula and Western Montana and advances transparency, equity, and democracy. And Matt and I are both from, originally we were both at Missoula Independent, which closed down in 2018. We can turn this up. I was the arts editor at the Missoula Independent for 10 years. And I was there when it closed down. It was bought first by Lee Enterprises and then shut down after we unionized. And it was a pretty dramatic shutdown. But I just remember that not long after it was shut down and people were really upset about it, that I started sort of feeling a little bit differently about it, which was we have this sort of chance to start over as an independent organization, and we can kind of rethink what the model for journalism looks like, and we can start kind of investigating a little bit about what our community actually needs from us. And so it took about 5 years for us to, so it was me and, we started other people at the Independent kind of working together, and then eventually Matt came on board with me, and Matt is also a former reporter of the Independent. And as we started talking about this new model, we started thinking about both how we support it in a new way, because the model was antiquated before, was just based on ad sales. And we wanted to there were a lot more grant opportunities and a lot more, like just a couple of years ago kind of started, where there was a lot more support for I guess, through grants and through foundations. And so we were able to think about this as a nonprofit rather than the sort of usual for-profit. And I'll have you. I guess that was the one, go ahead. And so, as we started thinking about this, we did start thinking about our background at the Independent was as an alternative weekly. So we saw ourselves as an alternative to, the daily newspaper, which we felt was important to have, and then we kind of complemented it by providing sort of some more in-depth investigative journalism, and also try to bring this angle to it that was, I guess, we would find like a really human-centered angle to it. We would find the weird sort of, I guess, man bites dog idea. And it was a way to kind of think about how we break people out of kind of the glazing over of topics that feel a bit hard to get through. And so those topics are a lot of things that are important for civic engagement, including, things around like zoning or property taxes or those kinds of things. And we started really feeling like as we launched the Pulp that we wanted to not only engage people in the way that the Independent had in kind of this fun way, but also, I guess just we felt like in the past, journalists have kind of been in this role of being behind their byline. You didn't want to step too much into, you wanted to be an observer, right? But we started seeing other journalists feeling this way, that we are also part of the community, and we need to also engage with our community in the same way. And so this idea of pairing kind of like this fun, human-centered angle with stories that might get people to be able to take some sort of action was kind of like the sweet spot that we started working with. And so we have a couple stories that I think lead into this project that we're thinking about for this grant. And we did one that was on, Jacob Boehner actually wrote both of these, and he wrote Law of the Land, which was about zoning, and it took one property owner and kind of used them as the central story, and then use that as a way to explain zoning and the history around it and why it's so complicated. And so even though it was simplifying it, it was also not shying away from the fact that it's a complicated subject. And he also did The Anatomy of a Cold Snap, which was about Northwestern Energy's infrastructure. And it just went beyond reporting facts, and it broke down the complex system again. And it was from a first person point of view, but it was really sort of getting into the weeds in a way of, how energy works, but kind of starting from like a pretty basic level. Like, I think it's the same with city council or these things that we assume everybody really understands how they work, and a lot of times we just don't. There's too many aspects of it that need explaining, and so you'll find that people will just gloss over an article about these really important things that we deal with in our everyday lives. And so our idea was to make sure that we did kind of an explainer around it and made it feel like it was a personal thing that people could relate to. Okay. So our project concept is how Missoula works, and so it's sort of like, I'm sure all of you have seen like how stuff works, that same idea. So we were thinking about these, first of all, just kind of the different things that might be really interesting. They feel dry on the surface, but getting into things like how our water works, or like how does snow plowing work in Missoula. Really, like if you talk to somebody who's plowing the roads, what is their day like? What are the things that are complicated for them? How are decisions made around this? Why do some roads get plowed and others don't? And these things become really interesting once you start digging into them from this sort of personal, fun angle. So our idea was to take some of these topics and have the explainers answer, how does the system work? How did we get here? So that might be a historical context question. And what are the current issues we face with the system? So this would be like the typical thing article that we would write, like the problem. But what could be possible in the future is kind of a good example of solutions journalism, where we might look toward what other people are doing in other towns about the same issues that we might be facing here, and tell those stories. And maybe they're applicable to here or maybe not, but it turns out that being able to read about solutions is actually really helpful to people to want to engage. And so that is a really important part of this too, is just having that whole set. So the goal is to just take what kind of feels pretty opaque most of the time and turn it into something that's approachable, shareable, and actionable. What we want to do is because people absorb news or take in news in various ways, we want to have this grant fund video and multimedia production. We want to be able to fund the graphic design that might go into online and also some print versions of this. And we see also, we would need reporting and research that would allow us to dig into the history and policy and the human stories. And we also want to be able to reach out to the community and be able to use what we create, maybe be able to reach classrooms and libraries and other underrepresented represented audiences. And we want to bring in these expert voices, and that just means it could be anybody, like city engineers, people on the ground, historians who are looking at it from a high-level perspective, advocates and just regular people that might be sort of, through their experience, be experts. Our timeline is we would initiate one topic. We would also talk with the community through surveys and also through focus groups. And we also really like the idea of having people submit questions that they could be really weird questions about these things that we could actually report on. And then we would, in the winter and spring, we would produce that topic through various media. So through print, through podcast, whatever that particular topic might need, and we would sort of decide which media we might use for that, which medium. And then we would initiate the next topic, and it would sort of go like that, so we could focus on each topic at one time and spend our time kind of digging in and telling that story. And then I will go one more slide. For us, the success looks like, obviously, like in the broad sense, a more civically knowledgeable and engaged Missoula, but we would measure it through readership and video views, social shares, through survey responses we would do afterwards, and through community feedback that we could do in various ways, including in person. And examples of, and then taking, and then action, like examples of resident engagement and advocacy. We are able to see ways that's had an impact, and then just through the building of a permanent resource library of these materials that we produce. And that could be just something that on our site or wherever that people can go into, and they would be able to learn about each of these topics through these explainers and stories. And then, is there one more slide? Oh, no, that's it.
Thank you, Erica. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
We already know each other. I'm a fan. But one thing I don't think you mentioned is that it is free online, which is really convenient. And so, but I'm curious, what is your readership right now? Do you know?
Our readership, we track, I think the number that I know best is through our newsletter, and that's about 6,500 readers. So that's pretty impactful. People often get to our website through the newsletter. We have two newsletters. We have one that's an arts and culture one, and then we have one that's a newsy newsletter called Fresh Press. That's our readership. The other thing is we just put out our first print edition, and it was just an experiment because we just wanted to see what it felt like to do that. There's still just 2 of us running it with freelancers. But we really want to get to a point where we're at more than that, and we've heard a lot of people needing that. That's the way they want to be able to read the news. And so the idea would be, this is also one way that we could reach people is through this, picking it up at a coffee shop, and being able to read about these different topics that are, maybe they had, that have been feeling like too overwhelming for them.
You had Hannah back there hiding.
Yeah. Hi, sorry, I've been getting tears from the back, but I really love this idea. It seems like such a fun project to get to do, and a really cool way to incorporate people with a lot of different experiences and meet them at the table to tell their stories. I have 2 questions. So one is, when you were doing your timeline, you mentioned kind of 3 different stories between like now and next year at this time. How do you see yourself continuing to have that momentum when people are bought into this idea, when it's going to be like, once a quarter or a little more drawn out? Like,
how will we keep them engaged in these topics?
Yeah, so like if I am a new reader and I see that this campaign's going up, and I really want to be engaged with that. Maybe this just isn't how journalism works, so I don't know. Is your target population more so your existing readership, or is it more so like getting people to join with the Pulp through this project and be able to kind of continue their civic engagement with reading these stories?
Yeah, I think it's both, but I think it's really important to reach people that aren't part of our audience. And I think one of the things that I think about is some of these people that are experts. I think there's all kinds of people that could be involved in this, and they could be from very different places in Missoula, very different political backgrounds, and I think engaging them in this project is a way for us to sort of create some bridges and create some engagement from people that we wouldn't normally just, sign up for a newsletter or read it. I mean, we get people on our ads that pop up always saying, is this is some liberal rag. And I want to engage them. I want them to tell me what they know. I want them to tell me what they're concerned about. And I want them to envision what it means to them to be part of the community. And so I think this is trying to open things up a lot more and think about a wider audience.
Are there models for this that you're basing this on, or creating this from scratch?
Oh, that's a good question. So right now, I feel like the journalism landscape is really exciting because people are really rethinking how journalism works and how it impacts. And so Matt and I are always, we've gone to a few conferences, but we're kind of always talking with other news organizations around the country. And for instance, there's Range Media in Spokane, and they have, they put on like an event where it was about teaching regular citizens how to use the Freedom of Information Act for themselves. So that was like a great example of, we're kind of seeing people, journalists taking the lead on helping to not just like tell a story about a problem, but say like, here are the resources that are out there that might help you engage with it or find a solution. And so, yeah, we're seeing it with other organizations, and we just have I think we came to this idea just because we've been trying to figure out how to just make our stories feel more accessible.
One more question, was that you, Fran?
Well, I was just saying, I know you're a new organization, but how are you viable? Are you getting subscription?
So we're free and accessible to everyone, but we kind of like NPR. We have individual members who pay a certain amount, from $5 to $25 to some 200. Not a lot of those, but 200 a month, or but it's a lot of like 5 to 10. And then we have, and then because we're a nonprofit, looking for grants that, like I said, have been more available in the last few years for journalism. And then the third one that we've been developing and have been launching more recently is a Newsroom Partners program, which is basically businesses supporting us on a monthly level. And so it might be, there's a tiered level for them, and then we create sponsorships with each of those.
Thank you so much. Oops. Opening my wallet. I don't want to open my wallet. I want to open my agenda so I can pronounce names. So next up we have the International Rescue Committee. And all of my stuff closed. me one moment and I will attempt.
While you're doing that, let me get a snack, don't start yet.
As Willie said, I'm a fan of my own humanness and I try not to ever take myself too seriously. Seriously enough to get good work done, but not so serious that I don't have fun. So I want to welcome again Ashley Melwani, Managing Attorney, Catherine Fulcher, Legal Assistant, and Antonio Oliveras Ibarra. That's part of your name. I was like, what's an Ibarra Legal Assistant? Anyways, so the International Rescue Committee. So please come on in. Time Louise till I get myself organized. All right.
Hi everyone, it's so nice to be here tonight with all of you. And at first I was feeling really intimidated about having to present in front of our co-finalists, but I'm so glad that you set this up the way you did because I've learned so much and I am just desperate for all of these projects to be funded. So we have a really hard job, but I'm excited to sign up to be a member of both of these other organizations. I'm just grateful to be a part of this community. I'm feeling so awesome to be a Missoulian today. Please, next slide. We're going to start by introducing ourselves. I'm Ashley Melwani. I'm the managing attorney at IRC in the Missoula office. And I've been with IRC for about 2 years. I'm originally from Missoula, and I moved back about 5 years ago after living around the country and abroad, and most recently in the Bay Area where I did immigration law for about 10 years, primarily focusing on representing unaccompanied immigrant children. And I was thrilled to come back home 5 years ago and find a growing refugee and immigrant community here in my home state, and to find this really amazing organization that I got to plug into.
My name's Catherine. I've been with the IRC also for a little over 2 years, originally as our community engagement specialist and communications person, and now work with the immigration team as a legal assistant.
My name is Antonio. I've been with the IRC for a little over a year. I'm from Mexico and a recently naturalized citizen. In my previous role, I worked in refugee social services, providing casework assistance based on employment, and I am now happy to work in the legal aspect of our organization.
And the fourth member of our team who couldn't be here tonight, Jessie Littman, is based in Bozeman. She works just part-time for us, but she was originally one of the first members of our organization when we reopened in 2016 as a caseworker, and eventually became an accredited legal representative so that she could represent clients as well.
So the International Rescue Committee is an international humanitarian aid organization. It was founded in 1933 at the request of Albert Einstein to help individuals who were facing persecution by the Nazi regime, and Albert Einstein himself was a refugee. Currently, IRC works in 40 countries abroad, providing humanitarian aid. We work in disaster areas after environmental disasters, war zones, famine situations. And in the US, there's 29 US cities that provided primarily refugee resettlement services. These sites all operate fairly independently, and here in Missoula, we were a refugee resettlement site. That program has been paused, but we are still providing wraparound services to immigrants and refugees in our community.
IRC Missoula recently reopened in 2016 in response to the Syrian refugee crisis, as you may recall back then. Our office primarily serves refugees, asylees, special immigrant visa holders, and humanitarian parolees by providing initial resettlement services for the first 90 days when they arrive to Missoula. We also provide intensive case management that follows the post 90-day timeline. We also provide economic empowerment, which I was working on before my current role, and we provide legal services. And the three umbrella terms that we provide services for are helping to file for lawful permanent residency, file for naturalization, and also file for family reunification. Over the years, we have served over 1,000 refugees from 11 different countries. You can see the list up on the screen. And they're from various parts of the world, and we're just so lucky and so thrilled that they are our neighbors. They are perhaps your neighbors. Your kid probably go to school with their kids, and they're our friends, and we're just so proud and happy that they're part of our community.
Next slide. So before we get into the meat of our proposal, we wanted to take a minute to discuss the environment that we find ourselves in as immigration legal service providers in our state. You can go to the next slide. We think it's really important to ground this conversation in the real people that make up our community and that are at the core of our work. Immigrants in Missoula have come from all over the world, many times fleeing really difficult situations, direct violence, fleeing from war, before they make Missoula their home. And unfortunately, even after arriving here, they're still faced with many hardships. For example, an Afghan interpreter who worked with the US government as a member of our community that for many years now has been separated from his wife and children, who are still currently unable to be reunified because of the travel ban policy that's recently been put into place and a pause on immigrant visas. So despite these hardships though, we are also really overjoyed at their successes. Many people become business owners. There are students at the University of Montana and even serve in an organization called Refugee Congress, where they're able to advocate for refugees and immigrants on a nationwide scale. Next slide. But it still bears repeating that currently immigrants and those who want to support them are facing a lot of difficulty in this moment. Immigration policies are changing at a rapid speed, and it makes it very hard for immigrants themselves who maybe lack citizenship to understand their status and the protections or lack thereof that it offers. We've also seen a rise in anti-immigrant rhetoric and enforcement, which is just generating a lot of fear and uncertainty. It makes it difficult for immigrants who want to get involved in the community, and also allies who might not know how to support them or might fear retribution for doing so. As the only nonprofit immigrant service provider, legal provider with a full-time dedicated attorney in our state, we have been well postured for many years now to be a resource hub and a key source of information for these groups who are seeking answers to questions, who need updates. And in the last few months, we've obviously received a huge uptick in these sorts of requests to provide this information, to give presentations from people who are seeking ways to get involved. We're certainly trying to rise to the occasion, but our ability to meet this critical need and this really key aspect of our legal outreach program and this work has been unfunded.
And that's where you come in. And so we were so excited to see this grant opportunity. Historically, most of our funding has come from federal contracts, which many of which no longer exist, have been cut. Our staff size has shrunk. We recently moved into a new office to sort of weather this storm. But the silver lining of these times is that we are in this beautiful community, and it's a chance to really connect with all of you who we know care about these issues, care about your immigrant neighbors, and want to get involved and help support this work. And so, as Catherine said, there's been a huge demand for legal consultations, for Know Your Rights presentations, and for community education since the election last November, particularly. And we've really, we feel deeply that this is critical work that needs to be done and that we are well positioned to do it. And so we've been out there doing it without the funding to support it. And so we've participated in about 11 events around, mostly in Missoula, but in other parts of the state as well since January, and been the primary presenter at about 8 of those. And they've been such wonderful, meaningful opportunities to connect with the people we serve and others who want to support them. But to continue this work, we really need to find a way to make it sustainable. So we would intend to use this grant to support this kind of community outreach and education in 3 main buckets. So the first would be really targeting the non-citizen population, the folks that are most vulnerable under the current administration. And these could be folks who came to Missoula as refugees and have some legal protection through that status, but are also still really afraid and vulnerable right now. They could be folks who are somewhere along the pathway toward trying to get legal status. Maybe they have a pending asylum application that can take 10 years to process. Maybe they don't even know what relief they might be eligible for because they've never had a legal consultation before. And so these Know Your Rights and Responsibilities presentations are aimed at informing our immigrant neighbors what their legal rights are, what kind of relief options might be available to them, and what the Constitution provides them, regardless of their immigration status, how they should interact with law enforcement and what they should be aware of if they do get pulled over while driving, for example. We've also often paired these with legal consultations following the event so that people have the chance to speak one-on-one with a legal representative. Our goal would be to offer at least 2 events in Missoula County, as well as 2 events in other high-needs areas. And there are other parts of the state where we're seeing a much higher increase in immigration enforcement, ICE and CBP, and we want to make sure we get out and support those folks too. The second bucket would be allied community education. So the target for these presentations would be people who enjoy more privilege with their immigration status. People, for example, who are US citizens. We want to make sure to connect with these folks and educate them about what's going on and how they can get involved. And finally, coalition building. About a year ago, we helped create the Montana Immigrant Peer Network, and there are lots of amazing organizations that are a part of this with us. We've been meeting monthly, and just yesterday decided we probably need to start meeting twice a month because there is way too much to talk about to just meet once a month. But we share about what's happening in our own communities, we share resources, we do strategic planning and think about how we can engage together in advocacy. And we also, IRC, we manage a group listserv and a resource platform for that group as well. And we're also hosting immigration attorney roundtables to get together with the small number of immigration attorneys in the state, which is about 6, not nearly enough to meet the need currently. The timeline for our project is to try to do the first couple of events between December and May. Another event outside of Missoula probably, but sometime between January and June next year. We want to make sure, another one, between February and August, and a second round of Know Your Rights and Allied Community Education here in Missoula before the end of the year. And then we would spend the last couple months of the year evaluating our impact.
So the important question, how will this project impact the work that we want to do? Well, through civic education, coalition building, the IRC in Missoula works to transform fear into empowerment and isolation into solidarity and then uncertainty into action. So, next slide. So what does this mean? In today's climate, on the left, you can see that immigration enforcement and anti-immigrant policies can put fear, uncertainty, and confusion and a sense of overwhelmness in the immigrant and non-immigrant community. This can also cause withdrawal from community involvement, suppression of civic engagement, erosion of trust with local authorities, and we can see that on the daily, apathy and disengagement. But how can we counter that? And through our project, our primary focus is education, 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 and resource sharing with all of our partners and community members. Knowledge, confidence, and empowerment is what would result from that sharing of that information. Informed activism, increased safety and community involvement, amplified collective action, and immigrant voices uplifted in public discourse are what the final result of these talks would be.
Okay, and how will we empower people through this work? We believe education is empowering. Our outreach aims not only to inform, but to empower immigrants and their allies to engage confidently in their communities and stand together in defense of their rights. And what does that look like? It looks like having these red cards that you can carry in your wallet and that you know how to use. We actually do role playing at our Know Your Rights events so that people aren't trying to exercise their right to remain silent or to request a lawyer for the very first time when they are confronted with an officer, which terrifies me, and I'm a native-born person who doesn't have the same vulnerabilities as a lot of folks. It also looks like giving out these signs, and I saw one in the window here tonight, which is very exciting. Those are displayed in lots of local businesses to remind people what their rights are. And next slide, please. And we believe, when people are afraid, they don't feel comfortable going out to protest. They don't feel comfortable going to City Hall to meet with their local leaders, to engage publicly, or even to go to the ballot box sometimes if they don't have information and they're just feeling overwhelmed. But this is what Missoula is doing, and this is how Missoula shows up when they do have information and they do feel empowered. These are all local photos. Shout out to my friend Rose Zilliger, who's the founder of Missoula Resist. Her and her team are doing amazing work, and there is a No Kings protest on Saturday, so hopefully we can bring out these numbers again.
Okay, so we've touched on it a little bit, but in terms of the expected outcome and how we're going to measure success for our project, we can do our next slide. So from our Know Your Rights and Responsibilities presentations, we hope to equip community leaders with the knowledge they need to safeguard their rights, make informed decisions, be active in their community. Through our allied community education presentations, we want to help neighbors, faith leaders, educators, service providers, anyone that works in this community, to how they can understand immigration challenges, immigration policy, to advocate effectively.
Thank you. We have really interesting questions. Do we have any questions? Go ahead.
How are you funding your work currently? Like if your federal dollars have sort of disappeared, have you been receiving grants or, how are you guys doing this day to day?
Yeah, we have had to downsize quite a lot due to loss of federal funds. We still are holding on to some of our federal funds, but they're vulnerable. We don't know, what the future of that looks like. And so we're really leaning into applying for grants from private foundations and individual donors, and that is helping us weather this time right now.
Yeah, two questions. So follow up to Marissa's question would this $15,000 grant pay for all of this project, or do you have other funds that you would need to do that? And then my other question would be, how many individuals would you be connecting with? Obviously, you don't have totally a sense of how many people like these people you're interacting.
Yes, I'm sorry, I already forgot the first question.
First question was would the $15,000 grant fully fund what you described,
Right.
or are there other funds that you need or that you have to?
Yes. We believe that funding alone would allow us to do what we are proposing to do here. It would help cover staff time, materials, equipment, mileage, and costs with travel to some of these other locations. And the second question was, how many people might we reach? We were talking about that today, and how would we come up with a number? It's really tricky. Our events have ranged from probably 15 to over 300 when we've done events in for example, last month in the Bozeman Community Library, we had 135 people and 165 online or something like that. And so I would say each event will probably range in there. We are still building trust with the immigrant community in particular, and we are fortunate to have a bilingual Spanish-speaking staff, and we want to really be able to connect with folks where they are, but we need to make sure we are providing safe spaces, and sometimes that might be in a church or somewhere else where folks feel comfortable going. But I think that has been an obstacle in the early days when we were just starting to get out there. So I hope those numbers will grow as people feel confident. But sometimes a small, intimate setting is actually the best to have a meaningful dialogue.
What year were you guys established?
We reopened here in 2016.
But what does that mean? Like,
So that was when the
organization?
Missoula IRC opened. Yes, our organization was founded in 1933, and we are all too young to know, but we remember exactly what the situation was here in the 1980s. But there was an IRC presence back then. I mean, I do remember as a child that there were refugees in our community, but it closed down for a period of time and then reopened thanks to community members seeing what was happening with the Syrian refugee crisis and saying we have to do something.
Do you all collaborate with Soft Landing?
We do. We work very closely with Soft Landing, and in fact, a lot of the events I mentioned, we've done in collaboration with them. Sometimes at their office, sometimes in another community space where we've both been invited to go. Yes, our services, I think, very much complement each other. Yeah. And this is what my Know Your Rights binder looks like, full of red cards and handouts on lots of different topics. So feel free to take a look if that interests you.
Yeah, I understand that a lot of this is like legal support, but do you do any connecting among the refugees themselves so that they can support each other?
So, I mean, we do, previously when we had other federal grants, had a lot of classes and joint things. I think that is one place where Soft Landing fills a really critical need by having a really active community center and community-oriented events. Yeah, we have different focus.
The way I see it, IRC really provides that core basic support. Thank you for talking.
So again, congratulations to all 3 of our finalists. Thank you so much for your amazing presentations. I also want to, let's give them another round of applause. I have so much going on in my brain right now, it's like exploded tonight. Really, truly well done, all 3 of you. I want to make sure that we take a moment to thank MCAT for recording this. And Neil specifically for coming in on your day off. And we also, of course, want to thank Missoula Community Foundation, where we are housed, where we're a program of, and it has just made our life so, because all of our most of our money, except for a small administrative fee, goes to our community. And I know that everyone in this room is a mad believer in the importance of community. And I want to, of course, give a shout out to all of our steering committee members. If you could wave or stand up, whatever you're most comfortable with. But we do want to thank you for your dedication. And truly, I am feeling a little remiss because I want to say I'm just doing a different application process, and there were 16 applicants, and now I can't remember, but we had several applications this year. Yes, was it? 18 or 19, and really meaningful discussion and thoughtful discussion, and I think each person brings so much of that discussion to winnow it down to 3. But the steering committee does so much more than that. So I want to give a shout out to Katie Vaughn. Oh, there she is. I just glanced at you. I did that with Marcy earlier. I looked at her and didn't see her. But thank you, Katie, who's the chair of our events committee, who helps bring all of this together, and to everyone who brought some snacks to keep our budget light. And I want to thank all of you members. And if you aren't a member and you're intrigued and you're considering membership, please talk to anyone who is a member, really. And we will have time to visit today. And of course, I want to thank our amazing facility host, Good Works Ventures. I don't see, do we have anyone? Dawn? Nobody's, I don't see Dawn. So, okay, she keeps threatening to come. And so, I just want to make sure I don't forget anything, because that's part of my charm, part of my challenge. The vote email will be sent out tomorrow, and we have until November 11th to vote. So again, hopefully within the next week, give or take, week to 10 days, Neil, I'm looking for affirmation. the videos will come to you, especially for the members that weren't able to be here and see the presentations, to be able to see the videos. We'll make them as available as soon as we can. And our 3 grant finalists, just so you know, again, congratulations, because 2 years ago we did make the decision, so you get at least $1,000, and one of you will be awarded $15,000 from the grant. The $1,000 is unrestricted. And joining us is easy. Visit our website or scan one of our QR codes if you aren't a member and you're interested. It's not too late to join the part of this grant and be a part of this grant cycle. And what that means is that as long as you join before November, oh my gosh, Melise. Before November 11th, you get to vote on the recipient of the grant. What did I forget?
I didn't put it in there, I'm sorry. There's a QR code that's, if someone wants to lift that up.
No, you put it in.
No, the other QR code. There's one that says join and one that says vote. If
Oh.
you're ready to vote, you can actually vote.
Wonderful. You can vote tonight.
I think.
I'm not ready.
And put it there, so
But if you're ready, if you feel ready, I'm gonna wait and rewatch. But if you feel ready to vote tonight, do feel free. And if you have any questions, we have, well done, we have 19 minutes for more socialization and any further questions you can mill about. Again, thank you, and thank you for your graciousness. You know, this is the only giving circle I've ever been a part of. And so I only have lived what I learned. But I love that we have everyone be present for the full thing, because I think everyone here does amazing work in our community, and we are stronger together. And this is a very unique, well, somewhat unique, I shouldn't say very because I haven't been everywhere, Women's Giving Circle for several reasons. But one is we're made up of women and non-binary individuals, and we give, we decide, we benefit together. And whatever we do, it's always enough. So thank you for all your enoughness and all that you do for our community.